Today we have Scott Donnell on the show. Has actually helped over 7 million families understand financial literacy.
One of the first things I started realizing, these kids aren't getting everything they need. Where's the financial competency? Where's the practical skills? Where's the critical thinking? You are raised with this idea in school that there's only one right answer. Don't work in teams and collaborate. Don't ask questions. Regurgitate the memorized info on the test. That is not going to serve our future jobs in this world. Teach your kids to create value in the world first, not money. Teach your children that money comes from creating value. If your kids are raised thinking that you buy things for them because that's your job, or you give them an allowance because they deserve it, then they're not understanding the right view of money.
Welcome back to another episode of the Austin Zaback Show. Today we have Scott Donnell on the show, founder of GravyStack turned dinner table. Has actually helped over 7 million families understand financial literacy. We're going to unpack that. Is a father of 4, married for 12 years, actually been acquired or exited 3 different companies, currently owns multiple companies. And I'm very excited to have Scott on the show. Very small world, a lot of mutual friends. Scott actually was recently on the Lewis House podcast, so very, very cool. And I appreciate you being here, Scott.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this, man.
Yeah.
Let's unpack it. I'm an open book, dude. Like, you can ask me anything except for my social.
Well, I think everybody has that now because I think 2.9 billion people just got hacked. So
yeah,
you may as well just give it out at this point, right?
Go to Google. Yeah.
Well, maybe we can dive in real quick, Scott, for people who aren't familiar with who you are, what you do.
Yeah.
How did you get into this world? I mean, I understand now you have an app and you have a book and you travel and you speak and you teach. Really financial literacy, right?
Yeah.
But how did that even come to be? Like, what happened, many years ago that led to that?
Yeah, I come from a crazy family. We've been studying the top 100 families in the world. That's really my heart is for families, kids, adult kids, younger kids. Like, how do you teach the right skills and mindsets for success? Because it's sometimes, a lot of parents or even a lot of young people that are growing up, they're in their 20s or even early 30s, they're like, why didn't I get taught this? Mm-hmm. Like, how come nobody showed me this? How did geometry help me with budgeting or taxes, or investing? And so really my heart is for helping families. That's our mission. That's where most of the businesses have run. Definitely real estate, own a golf course, done a lot of finance and biotech even. But my heart really is for families. And I think a lot of it comes from, our first company that we launched was a school fundraising franchise. So we would go into schools. I started because my wife, she taught first graders and spent her whole paycheck on her kids. And I was like, what are you doing? You make 40 grand a year. And she's like, that's what we all do. We all, help our students. So I started a company to do fun runs, raise a ton of money for the school. We would put on like huge events, like blow up tunnels and tents and all this kind of stuff. And we ended up exploding. Like the company just grew super fast. I mean, we had hundreds of employees within the first couple years. Wow. And it was an awesome business. We're taking pies in the face every day. Super fun. I think that company's raised between $500 million and $1 billion now for
holy cow,
public and private education. And I love it. It's an amazing company. It's called Apex. But one of the first things I started realizing, this was about 15 years ago, these kids aren't getting everything they need, right? Like, where's the financial competency? Where's the practical skills? Where's the critical thinking? Where, this assembly line education structure, and it's not the teacher's fault. Teachers are angels, man. And, they're trying to get people through the system and help every kid. But if you are raised with this idea in school that there's only one right answer, don't work in teams and collaborate, don't ask questions, regurgitate the memorized info on the test, that is not going to serve our future jobs in this world, right? If you look at the pace of innovation and the changing landscape of jobs, we need to be training kids to learn how to learn and learn practical skills. And like competencies for the real world, and then really let them run. Like if you have flow time and you love to build or draw or write or read or sell, we need to be like throwing fuel on that fire for them. And so that's really what led us into this way of thinking. And that's what led to Dinner Table.
Really, really cool. And I'm excited to like peel back that entire onion. We're going to do a deep dive. So for anybody listening, make sure you stay to the very end. But one question that comes to my mind right out of the gate, Scott, is like, why do you think in the public schooling system, they don't talk about money? Like what went wrong, or is this intentional? Was it designed that way? In your opinion, you know?
Yeah, look, this could be a conspiracy theory rabbit trail. I'm very careful with this conversation because I do help a lot of the national bodies that try to come up with some of this curriculum. We've had a lot of fights. I have a target on my back from a lot of people. But I think the issue here around money specifically, and I think we have to unpack this in a minute because it's actually, you have to take it a step back to value creation, which we'll talk about. But if you just think about the money side, every parent or every, kid that becomes an adult and goes off into the real world, they rail against the education system. They're like, who taught me? No one taught me this stuff. I never got financial training. I never got any of this. Well, you got math. You did debits and credits sheets when you were 12. But the problem is you can't homework money. In fact, I don't even like the term financial literacy at all. It's a competency that you acquire by doing it and earning it. You cannot read money like a book. And that's why we can't expect, young people in school systems that don't deal with money to learn about money. That's like if you and I played Monopoly one time, we'd both be real estate mogul billionaires. Right. Well, I mean, you're a killer in real estate, but it wasn't because you played Monopoly one time. It's because you went out and did it.
Yep.
And you learned it and failed and tried and went through healthy struggle. So when it comes to like money skills, that's what they are. Skills are acquired by going through the motions in the real world. Okay. And that's why we started our first attempt in trying to do this was our children's business fairs. So we do one every year here in the local park here in Phoenix. We got hundreds of kids come. They create fun businesses. They sell soap, slime, t-shirts, paper airplanes, whatever they create. And then people come, we bring in 1,000 customers and they buy from the kids. So they learn profit, cost of goods, competition, selling, pitching, marketing, all these skills that are only acquired when you actually make $1 doing it, right? They walk away with hundreds of dollars of revenue, and that's when a kid actually learns this stuff, not from doing more homework. And, the deeper issue around it was we found that most kids didn't even want to talk about money. It was the biggest fight in their home. So, when we did our surveys on parents and kids, the parents by and large said, yeah, we don't have a roadmap. Like I have no clue how to teach my kids. I'm hoping that I can outsource it to the right school or sports or extracurricular. But you should never outsource your parenting. But the bigger issue is when the kids said, I don't really want to deal with it. It's, my parents are arguing over the bills, work. That's where their stress comes from. They say things like, money doesn't grow on trees. We can't afford this. You know how much that costs? Like, you don't know the value of $1. You're like, do you know how hard I worked to get you this and you just blew it or took it for granted? That's the kind of stuff kids hear around money. It's not positive most of the time. And there's a lot of things to unpack around that. But what we've realized is you have to do this in the home and have these conversations with your children in a specific way that gets them to actually take steps to learn it in the home. And then they can start learning the money skills to be successful out in the real world. So I really don't blame the education system as much. I do think that there's issues in the education system. Do you know what the original documents were 100 years ago when they started the public education system?
I do not.
The name of it was 1917, and the name of it was Publicus Locatus, which Latin translates to in place of parents. And so if you just take that thinking and you fast forward 100 years, it's become an unbelievable propaganda machine. It's become like a way for people to wield one way of thinking to an entire generation.
Sure.
And if you're trying to be in place of parents, that's not somewhere I think that is going to create value long-term in our society. I think more of the control should be with the parents, more of the parenting decisions with the parents, more of what they're learning. When COVID hit, two things happened because we were working with millions of families. Two things happened. So kids come home from school, parents come home for work. Number one, kids found out for the first time what mom and dad did for work, right? In mass, like everyone found out.
Like they saw it.
They saw it for real. And number two, parents saw what kids were learning in school for the first time. They saw it on screens. And they saw what the kids were not learning. And I think that's really why you've seen this, like, it's like a 7x increase in homeschool in the last 4 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Tons of public pressure being put on school systems to innovate and change. COVID has a lot of things that's changed for our world, but that was a big one for the education system and parents kind of opening their eyes for the first time. So that's our mission, is like with Dinner Table, we want to try to teach families and really adult children, young children, like all the things that they need for success in the real world.
Yeah.
Right. That's super cool. That's the key.
Really cool. And so we'll go there in a minute because I really want to dive into the conversation of creating value, right? Like you mentioned. Before we do that, I'm curious because I'd imagine when we start talking about that too, we also have to talk about the parents.
Right.
So we have to talk about the kids and the parents, right?
Yeah.
And, you as a parent and a business owner, entrepreneur, who's succeeded and failed, where did you, because you say you grew up in a broken family-ish, right? Or to some degree?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
We had an amazing family.
Okay.
But, everything we teach now, we've been studying the top families in the world. My family probably does like 40% of all of the awesome strategies that we give to families.
Wow.
It's like a recipe book. Like, hey, do this in your family. Do this with yourself, even if you don't have kids or aren't married. Practice these mindsets, these strategies, and over time, it's a recipe for success.
Yep.
But in my family, they did, pretty well. I come from...
You grew up with your parents?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So 4 generations in our family of entrepreneurs.
Wow.
And, obviously failures along the way and struggles, but also incredible success. But they didn't pass it on. They didn't give us the money. They gave us the mindsets.
And are you glad that they didn't pass it on?
I couldn't be more thankful. It has protected our relationship. It has taken me to a place in my business career and with my family that I would never have got to had I just been handed a check.
Wow.
Or been paid things paid for my whole life. That's where entitlement comes from. That's where spoiling comes from. That's where victimhood comes from. If you have things solved your whole life and you realize that you could just complain or whine or blame other people instead of taking personal responsibility, it's a recipe for disaster. And so our family was my dad and my grandpa built Interwest Bank up in Washington State, grew it to 90 branches, exited to Wells Fargo for over $1 billion. And they put that in charitable trusts for missions and widows and orphans and helping people all over the world. And, they helped me out with half a college, and I was thankful. And it's protected our family's legacy rather than all the chaos you see of lottery ticket kids. Right? So that's why one of the biggest things that we teach is your kids need heritage, not inheritance. It's not a bad thing to think about leaving them something, but way more important is a last name that means something and passing on the values and beliefs and mindsets and skills for success. And that's what actually creates a deeper relationship with them long term. I don't know any adult children who have an entitled victim mindset for the world that have a good relationship with their family.
Wow.
It's one of the greatest recipes for disaster. So that's why, if you're just doing your whole career and your businesses and your whole mindset is, I just need to acquire, and grow so I can die with a bunch of stuff to pass on as my legacy, that is the anti-legacy.
It's so fascinating because the majority of the world would argue the opposite of that, right?
Yeah.
Which means that the majority of the world they have it backward.
Yeah, it's exactly the opposite. So what we study is what happens when you just pass on all your stuff. And I'm not saying don't do any of it. Let's be very clear, okay? Because there's a difference between I love you and coasting gifts. We can unpack that. But 90% of generational wealth transfer is gone by the grandkids.
Wow.
It's either wasted, blown, given to the government, put into a bunch of stuff that doesn't create value. And underneath that 90% number is the worst part. Divorce, addiction, estrangement of children, broken relationships, violence, drugs, alcohol. I mean, Jordan Peterson told this to a small group of us one time. He said, you know, the only thing that keeps an addict out of the gutter? It's being broke. And money just makes you more of who you already are. And if you're raising kids with entitlement mindset, where they're just expecting you to pay, or they're just expecting a big paycheck from you throughout their life or when you die, they won't risk and grow and go through healthy struggles to create value in the world. They won't take that personal responsibility. They won't be self-reliant. They won't own their own life because you're going to own their life. And that is the thing that I think keeps a lot of these generational families back.
Wow.
And there's a lot we can unpack on money mindsets of how you're raised, because a lot of other issues can happen if you're raised from nothing, right? Started from the bottom, now we're here. That causes a whole nother set of things. But
and I want to dive into that too.
Yeah. Families teeter-totter.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'll even maybe share a little bit of my upbringing and get your perspective, because I'd love to hear your thought on it. I'm curious too, Scott, what was the conversation like when you were a kid at home? Like before you turned 18, even, like, you know, maybe you can just give a couple of examples, because you mentioned a little while ago that the conversation in maybe what we might call like the average household in America is all the things that you said. Money doesn't grow on trees, all these different things, right?
Yep.
Which is really a scarcity mindset, I think, which maybe we can unpack in a little while. What was the conversation like in your home growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I was really raised like, we don't do chores in this house, we build skills. That was probably one of the greatest things that I was built with. And it's a lot of our teaching. It's, hey, you're not just, your job as a parent is not to raise future children. Your job as a parent is to raise future adults. And it doesn't make sense to spend the whole time with your kids in your house as a caretaker rather than a coach. See, if you're just spending the whole time caretaking, then you're paying for everything. You're handling their issues. You're fighting the teacher for better grades. You're fighting the coach for more playing time for them. You're bringing them their lunch if they forget it. You're checking their homework the day before. You're buying these things for them. Everything, right? Because parents hate, like, it's just exhausting to say no all the time. And kids keep nagging because they know if they nag enough, they'll get what they want. Or if they throw enough temper tantrums, they'll get what they want. And so then parents either go, oh, I'm going full speed, tough love, no on everything, which can break relationship. Or they go full on the other way, which is like, just, I need a break, give them what they want, turn on the iPad, pay for this. Especially in co-parenting homes, kids are going back and forth between mom and dad are using money and stuff to bribe and coerce and buy love.
Wow.
Because you got to have a better time with me than you are at your dad's.
I never thought of it like that.
Yeah. So a lot of the coaching that we can do helps those families get on the same page, have a balanced perspective, and focus on skills mindset. Is this best for the kid's future? Right? And if you set up the system the right way, we know how to get your kids to like never ask you for money and stuff ever again. And no more conflict over chores. A lot of those behavior issues go away. So you can actually focus on building a great relationship with them. More of that coaching mindset with your kids. So, you know, that was a big part when I was a kid. I was shredding papers at the bank at 6 years old, I remember. My first business was like 8 years old. Like, I wanted to buy something because my parents were like, look, we have money. You don't have money, right? Like, we're wealthy. You're not, right? You're going to have a lot of amazing opportunities in this family, but we want to teach you to fish. So my first business was 8 years old, bead gecko keychains. Wow. Okay. You put beads on a string and you make this little gecko. You can sell it for $2. And I was hiring my classmates for $0.25 to make them. Okay. And then I would just go door to door and sell them. I go to office. I just sell them all over, make hundreds of dollars. I was like in 3rd grade. Well, after like a month, no one was going to lunch or recess in my class. Like, they were all just making the keychains because they were having so much fun making them. They weren't going out to lunch and recess. And the principal caught word of it and suspended me. And there goes my supply line in my business. But I get home, I thought I was going to get a whooping. And my dad took me out to dinner, like steak dinner. He's like, do this for the rest of your life. And that's the kind of thinking. Like, we want to be focusing on building skills, like with our kids.
Yeah.
And if you just, if you're a caretaker their whole life, caretaking is for old people that don't want to add value anymore in the world. And your whole goal with caretaking for elderly people is to keep them away from pain, right? But with children, you need to be their coach, right? You need to move much more quickly from caretaker to coach in their childhood.
Sure.
And I think a lot more families would be way better off if they focused on that mindset, right? So with our kids, we're coaching them. We're not answering all their questions. We're not fixing all their problems. We're not paying for everything they want. We're definitely covering their needs, right? Our children have a wonderful home life, but it's about skills building, capabilities. If you can build capabilities in your kids, that's how they get confidence. Because you can't tell your kid enough that they're smart or pretty or good at soccer to give them inner confidence. Inner confidence is only gained through overcoming, solving your own problems, and learning capabilities that then go create value in the world, right? But if you don't ever go through that full cycle, then kids they're dependent.
Sure.
And then they blame you, and they blame the government, and they blame their employer. It's everybody else's fault when they grow up.
And we're seeing a lot of that right now in the world, right?
It's everywhere.
Everywhere in the world. And maybe in a little while we can even dive into that. I saw a couple of clips, maybe one of the more controversial things that you say.
I got a list.
Yep.
I got a list.
This will be one of them. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you've said chores is like socialism. When you pay people, correct me, I think you said that. When you pay a kid to do chores, allowance, okay.
Yeah, allowance is socialism. Look, I'm not anti chores. I'm just level-headed enough to realize chores just causes a lot of conflict, and it gives kids the wrong view of creating value in the world.
Sure.
That's the point. So, it's one of the main things we teach. Actually, the most important thing to talk about is value.
Okay.
Let's unpack that first before I anger everybody listening who gives their kids an allowance. But hear me out, because I didn't become the leading expert in this without taking a bunch of hits.
Sure.
The goal of the best family. So we've been searching the best families for 10 years.
Hundreds of them.
100 families around the world, studying them, meeting them, interviewing them. We're in a private group together, get together with our families and help our businesses, our families, our legacies. One of the number one things we ever learned was teach your kids to create value in the world first, not money. Money is a store of value. So you have to teach your children that money comes from creating value, solving problems, finding wants and needs, learning what other people want to get or need to get, and solving it for them. That is how that type of value is created. It's called material value. And money is a store or a reward for creating it. And if your kids are raised thinking that you buy things for them because that's your job, or you give them an allowance because they deserve it, then they're not understanding the right view of money. Okay, money is a store of value. So it all comes back to creating value in the world. Material value, emotional value, and spiritual value. So these families, they took it back to first principles. They're like, okay, if we just ignore money with them, they're going to become entitled and victims. If we only talk about money with them, and that's like a huge focus, well, then it becomes identity. Then money becomes achievement, status, keeping up with the Joneses. I will literally value people differently based on their money. And that's the wrong attitude as well around money. That is a never-ending hamster wheel that causes some of the biggest traumas in families that we see. The right view is to take it a step back and say, all money comes from creating value, and only one type of value, right? That's the material value. So we want to help our kids get really good at creating material value and solving problems, getting wants and needs for other people or around the house or in the community, right? But we also want to help them learn to create emotional value. Emotional value is the kind of friend you are or sibling. It's how you think and feel and help others think and feel better, okay? Emotional intelligence. Like, there's a reason why the captain of every team, the leader in every group, and the first one to get the job and the promotion always creates the most emotional value in the room. That's a critical skill, and it's wholly different than money. It can be related to material value, but it's wholly different. It has another value set, a reward for it, okay? And then the last one's spiritual value. That's how you get people outside their ego and pride and selfishness to a higher mission, to God, if you will, right? To be connected to something above yourself. Like I'm a Christian. I don't pull punches. Like that's my way that I see has created the greatest spiritual value.
Yeah.
How do you love people, right? Live in service to others. That is creating spiritual value. A lot of anxious people really struggle with creating spiritual value and emotional value in the world.
Interesting.
Okay. A lot of fearful people, right? That's how it's created. And so if we can help our kids see it as like, oh yeah, there's so many ways I can create value. We want to teach our kids to become value hunters everywhere they go. And some of it's related to money, the material side, but the emotional and spiritual is how they show up in the home, their role in the family, how they show up in school, or how they show up on the sports team. All these things create value for themselves and other people. You start there, and then the rest it's literally gravy.
Yeah.
So that's the core of value creation, all right? So when you look at it through that lens, it's like, okay, let's raise kids to become value creators in the world. Well, now, allowance doesn't serve that purpose. Allowance is giving your kids money by existing every week, right? There's a lot of parents do. They're like, well, I got to get them to learn something about money, so let's just give them money every week.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that is not teaching them anything about money, all right? But then some parents, they say, well, my kids do chores and I give them allowance. Okay, a little better, but you still have conflict over chores. You're still reminding them 100 times to do things. You still have issues, and half those chores should not be tied to money. And
wouldn't you argue, and not to interrupt you, that certain chores, like if one chore is harder than another chore, you're paying them equal.
You're paying them a salary.
Right. So
for
it's
chores.
like you're not instilling like, hey, the more value you provide, the more money you make.
And that's the break, okay?
Right.
So chores for allowance is a lot better than just giving them free money.
Sure.
But chores, half of them should be their role in the family. Like with our kids, we call those expectations in the home. You should never pay your kids to like make their bed, clean their room, do their homework first when they get home, dishes and trash. Like this is our role in the family. We're going to pick up after ourselves. We're going to treat each other with kindness, starting your day with the right routines. These are the role in the family. They should never be tied to money. Okay. But then the other half of quote unquote chores should be individually paid based on the value the kids are creating. So they need to learn like, oh, okay. So if I help, like if I do the laundry, that could be a $3 gig for the family, right? If I go take care of the whole garage, organize it and sweep it, and that could be a $5 or $10 thing. So, and you don't stop there, right? Like that's just, we call those action gigs, okay? Using your hands and feet to create value around the house. It's a great way for kids to earn their first money, seeing how to create value. But then you throw in brain gigs, and then the whole thing changes. It becomes super fun. The kids are intrinsically motivated to create value, and they don't ask you for money and stuff. No more conflict over chores. It's the secret sauce.
Really?
So yes, a brain gig is teaching children to build skills and create value using their brain. So why not pay your kids to like listen to a podcast or a TED Talk or a PragerU video or read a book or an article that's good for their life? That's a skill you want them to learn. And then when they come to you and report what they learned and what they're going to apply to their life, it's a $5 gig. It's a brain gig. Okay. No sugar for a week. No screen time for a week or a month or whatever. Right. These are really fun challenges for kids and teens to learn skills, create value with their brain, and it makes the whole thing fun.
Yeah.
Right. Like we just had our daughter plan the summer trip, and she's 8. Okay. So Reagan, she was looking at flights. She's looking at, we're going to rent, we're going to Turo, where are we going to eat? What are we going to do? She saved us like $1,000, and she planned the summer and learned all these capabilities. It was a brain gig.
Yeah.
And she got $40 for it and loved it. And then she owned the whole trip for our family. It's a core memory. I guarantee you, we just created a core memory for her.
She'll remember that for the rest of her life.
For the rest of her life. Let me ask you a question. Do you create more value in your company using your brain or your hands and feet?
My brain. 100%.
Why aren't we teaching this to kids?
Right.
They have to understand that like your brain is probably the greatest value creator you have. And you can use that to solve these issues and solve problems for other people. But what most parents do is they just fight with their kids, like, go, mow the lawn.
Yeah.
Go clean your room. Go make this meal. Go pick up the toys. It's constant. If you set up this other system, which we call like the family economy system, you have your expectations in the home. That has nothing to do with money, just their role in the family. You have these gigs, ways that they can earn on top of it, brain gigs and action gigs. And then you have expenses. If you have your kids start paying for things in their life, they will have a motive to go create value and earn. Now you have washed your hands of it, and they're off and running, and you are raising future adults. And the expenses is what no parent ever does.
Yeah.
Except for these top 100 families in the world. They had their kids be in charge of certain things starting at age like 5 and 6. Toys, trinkets, social outings, games. They're like, hey, if you want to play basketball, awesome. Like, we're going to do it. We'll pay for things, but you're paying for the basketball or the shoes.
Wow.
And then the kids go, oh, I don't need the Air Jordans. I'm good with the Reeboks. Because now they're in charge of it. And they need to do the gigs to save the money to buy those things. Mm-hmm. And when you make money, we have a simple rule. It's like 10% goes to giving and sharing with other people, generosity, abundance. 20 to 30% goes towards saving and investing, automatically stocked away for future you, right? You're giving that money the job of making more. And then the rest of it is used on those expenses. First, the stuff you need, and then the stuff you want.
Yeah.
And you just follow that principle, right? Pro tip, if you switch that 70 and that 20, you're going to have a more incredible life of value creation. Best thing my dad ever taught me was like, hey, you're always giving your 10. But what if you lived off of 20%? True. And you saved and invested the 70? Then you'll be able to have way more cash confidence.
Yeah. You'll
be able to live the way you want to live, and you'll be able to do more things that create more value for other people throughout your life.
Sure.
So I immediately changed my mindset, because most parents and most adult children are like, I just need to get that salary so I can live the way I want to live. And that is a scarcity mindset.
It is. Yeah.
If you go, actually, no, I want to live below my means and invest the difference, save the difference, then you start to see the benefit of delayed gratification, compounding interest, more value creation in the future. So that's the kind of thinking that we want families to get. And you can start as early as 5, 6 years old. Actually, we have a quarter system for 2 to 5-year-olds. Even.
Really?
Yeah. So that is the thinking that we want parents to have.
So cool.
Yep.
Yeah, it really is. And you see it play out, right? Like when you become an entrepreneur, it becomes blatantly obvious as an adult that that's like how the world actually works too, right? Like the more value I bring to the marketplace, money is just the byproduct of that, right? Like,
that's right.
And you see, and maybe you can elaborate. I've seen so many people in my life chase money, right? As adults, and And you kind of mentioned this a little while ago about like these parents and stuff that like how you have kind of two ends of the spectrum, where all you talk about is money versus you never talk about money, right?
Yep.
What ends up happening with these people who they're focused so much on the money, and they never lead with value, right? Like, what's the end result of that? Is it just misery? I mean, where do you see people end up that go down that rabbit hole?
Almost always it's a form of comparison that creates misery. If all you do is think about the money side, right? Then all you're going to focus on with your kids is trying to get them as rich as possible, as young as possible. And that is a type of pressure that kids have a very difficult time connecting with. So that's the keeping up with the Joneses mindset. Okay, it becomes achievement, it becomes status, it becomes I'm only worthy and valuable if I go get a rich person job. Okay, and that's not necessarily true. You can create a ton of value in so many different types of careers or callings. You just have to have the value creation mindset. I know people that create immense material, emotional, and spiritual value quilting.
Yeah,
and you go quilting. It's like, yeah, my mother-in-law pays $35 a month to join a quilting club, right? And it was a hobby turned incredible community, incredible value. They're sharing stories all the time. They give community to so many of these like middle-aged older women all around the world.
Yeah.
It's like you can create so much value in so many different ways. But if that quilting founder decided to go off and be a nurse or say, oh, I have to get a high-paying finance job or some VC thing, they might have missed that joy, right? And so you have to unpack this. Like if somebody's raised with in a wealthy family, you already have this like, oh no, how am I going to do that too? Or they run away from it. Okay. And they're like, that was miserable. We had a lot of money and stuff, but no love. We didn't have a lot of connection. And a lot of those parents, if you are raised in silver spoon, like everything was paid for, everything was handled, you never had to struggle. That is what breeds the entitlement victim mindset when they get older, right? They blame their parents more than anything else. It's my parents' fault. And then they raise kids with like a hard knock, like tough love mindset. And then you're teeter-tottering. You're like breaking the relationship with your kids because it's like this tough love, like painful existence. And then when parents grow up, if they grow up with nothing, barely scraping by, paycheck to paycheck, started from the bottom, now I'm here, and then they do well, they start to grow in their business or grow in their income, they want to give their kids all the things they never had. I want my kids to have all the opportunities I never had. I don't want them to struggle the way I had to struggle. And that's where you get this cycle that repeats. Yeah. So then the kids grow up entitled. They don't learn value creation. They're bubble wrapped. And then they grow up and that breaks relationship and legacy. And that's the painful part that we see with so many families. And so what we're trying to stop is this teeter-totter from generation to generation. Like there's so many simple things you can do, whether you are making millions of dollars as a family or you're not, right? Maybe you're in a, 7, 8 figure, 9 figure, who knows, right? You can teach these skills and have great conversations around value creation that help your kids over time continually compound the value that's created. And the only way that goes is success. It does, like in so many different ways, regardless of the type of career. Like it just creates so much more value in the family. So I'll give you an example, okay? There's a kid I've been coaching on this because we coach tons of families. Yep. But he's one of the longest, okay? 10 years.
You've been coaching him for 10?
10 years.
Wow.
I know his parents really well. They're some of our best friends.
How old?
He's 21.
Okay.
So it started when he was 11.
Yep.
Giving him the value creation thinking, okay? He has been, he's an IT guy, so he loves tech. He lives here in Phoenix. His name's David. He has been promoted 6 times in his current company.
Wow.
Making hundreds of thousands of dollars. He's managing a team of 25 or 30 people. He reads a book a week. Everything I tell him to read, he's hungry for knowledge. He's on his second real estate property already. He got away from the wrong 2 relationships with girls, and now he's got the right one. They started a nonprofit for high school kids to mentor them in this already, and giving them apprenticeships. He's 21.
Wow.
And last month, after we had a conversation, he went to his boss at this $6 billion company here in town. And he said, I think I hit a ceiling for value creation. I'm going to go off, create my own IT agency and solve these problems for other businesses like I did for you, because he's already created $20 million of value from the IT work he's done in the business. The next day, they brought him into the office and they said, nope, you're not leaving. You're promoted to the CTO of the whole company.
Oh my gosh.
$600,000 salary, $1 million in benefits a year, and we're going to pay for your MBA right now, and you're going to get paid salary to go do it for the next year. And if you ever come back and tell us you hit a ceiling of value creation again, you're gone, because we want to give you full reign to do this for the rest of your career.
Wow.
That's what happens, and I have tons of stories like that. That's what happens when you think of value creation at a young age. Okay? Everything he thinks through is through that lens. Everything he thinks through is like, how do I create the most value in my friendships or with coworkers or my family? How do I create the most material value in work, right? So he knows his drivers. He knows exactly what to focus on. This is 80-20 simplified. and he's just crushing. And his dad called me in tears. He's like, I never imagined I could have a son like this.
Wow.
And he's an amazing family man and friend, and like they go on trips and they connect, and it's a joy to have a value created adult as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
That is a total joy. There's no comparison, right? Because everyone's on their own value creation journey. There's no competition there. It's healthy competition, but it's keeping the relationships.
Mm.
And that is every parent's, I think, greatest hope. It's like, my kids are going to make it. They want them to be secure, and they want them to be financially well off, and they want to stay connected. Like, but if you want to get there, you got to focus on the value.
Mm-hmm. Well, how do you fix the parents that have a broken mindset when it comes to money? Like, let's just say, you have a family, right? And you have the adults in that family that really they have a broken mindset when it comes to money. They maybe have a scarcity mindset, or they just have the wrong mindset about money. But they want their kids to have the right mindset, but they don't even know where to begin,
Right?
Because their mindset's all jacked up, right?
That's right.
Like, where do you start with them so that they can then teach the right things to their kids?
Yeah, I mean, this is so many of our families in Dinner Table.
Mm-hmm.
So Dinner Table it's a coaching program for families on what we call true legacy.
Yep.
Okay. Legacy is not dying with a bunch of stuff to pass on to problem family. Okay. Legacy is raising kids and grandkids and great grandkids to blow by you in all the ways that matter. So faith and values and beliefs, mindsets and skill sets, financial competencies, practical skills, relationship depth, value creation. Okay. That, if you do that 3 or 4 generations in a row, you've got something special.
Oh, for sure.
And that is the dream. So we coach families these are all the things we've learned from the best in the world. We're just passing them on. It's like, okay, this is the process in the home. Here's the tool. Here's the way to talk about it. Here's the strategy. Here's what you should talk about and think about. But that's the easiest way, is like, come in, go through the coaching. It's cheap.
Yep.
And you can start implementing right away. And most importantly, you need accountability. That's why, instead of trying to sell more courses or books or whatever, 97% of people don't actually implement.
Yeah.
And what value is there in that? Right? Because that's how I think about everything in business. It's got to create value. So for us, it's this coaching program with a bunch of families that are sharing with each other, sharing best practices, asking questions, the hardships, what's not working, what is working, keeping accountable. And then over time, you move down the line where things just start to click, and you start to see the impact for your family and your business and your relationships. All this stuff has a positive value creation when you start to implement.
Yeah.
So that's the easiest way to start. But I think the first mindset is that value creation piece. And I would see your family as your number one investment. Okay. See, you and I, we have employees, we have teams.
Yeah.
My employees are not expenses. They're investments, right? My job is to help them blow by me, right? To raise them up, to give them advancement, to give them opportunities, to invest in them. That's what creates a great business. That's what creates a good culture in your business. Why are we not applying that to our family? Your children or your marriage or your relatives or your family is and should always be your number one greatest investment. And you are in your family, so you need to prioritize yourself too. Invest in coaching, invest in learning. And so if you see your family as an investment, right, to build true legacy, you want to be investing in this stuff. And so that's why we have our program. Like, for the families that go, yeah, we've got some great stuff going on, we've got some struggles, we want to be like the best family we can be.
Yeah.
And I want to be the happiest grandparent or great grandparent out there. So they come in and they get coached.
Super cool. And we'll link that down below, by the way, if you're watching right now, so you can go check that out.
Yeah.
I want to tell you a story, Scott, and then I want to get your feedback on it, because it's going to be one end of the spectrum that you were talking about a little while ago, I think. So
I might ask you follow-ups too on your family.
I love it. And I'm an open book, just like you told me.
All right.
So I ultimately grew up with my grandparents primarily. My grandparents they owned their own company, but they made it a very average income, right? Nothing special. But I always wanted to have a normal family. Like, I remember as a kid, on so many occasions, thinking to myself, man, like what I would do to be able to live with my dad, live with my mom, right? Because I wanted that.
Yeah.
but it never really happened. I tried it off and on because my mom and dad were around, but they were divorced. And then I always end up back at my grandparents, right? And my grandparents were kind of my foundation. But the older that I got, this didn't dawn on me probably till about 5 years ago, and I'll back into the story. I realized that my dad played a way bigger impact on me than I thought, and I didn't even really spend a ton of time with him. So my dad was a workaholic. He worked, it was the reason for my mom and my dad getting divorced. My dad worked 7 days a week for 40 years, right?
Yep.
And, 12-hour days all the time, nonstop. And not only was he a workaholic, but what I remember as a kid is that I knew he made a lot of money because I could just tell by observing, right? Like he made probably 50 grand a month for 40 years. One of the most consistent people, which, over the long enough period of time, that type of money will add up, right? And he was the most frugal human being on the planet. To the point where I remember trying to live with him one time. I moved out of my grandparents. I was so excited. My dad agreed to let me live with him. And I was so excited to go live with him. And I moved all my stuff to my dad's. And I probably was 10 years old, And he's got this great big house, right? And I remember in the middle of the night, in probably July, it was 100 degrees in the house, sleeping in bed at midnight. And I'm like, Dad, we got to turn the air conditioner down, And he's like, no, you don't. He's like, go jump in the pool every time you get hot and then go back to bed. He's like, that's what I do. He's like, I'll wake up 3 times throughout the night and I walk out in the backyard and jump in the pool and then go back to bed, And that was and to this day, my dad drives a 1970 Camry or 1980 Camry, beat to hell. And who knows how much money he's got, a lot of money. But if you saw him, you would think he was homeless, right? So my question for you, and let me just add one more thing.
Yeah. Oh, I got more questions for you, man.
When I turned,
this is good.
What ended up happening, and none of this dawned on me until probably about 4 or 5 years ago. I realized that I turned out to be the opposite. So I, all of a sudden, without even really knowing, at a very young age, I made it all about the money, and I wanted to make a lot of money, right? And I wanted to do cool stuff. And I bought my first Lamborghini when I was 20 years old, and then I bought an Audi R8, and then another Lamborghini, and I traveled the world, and I lived in the penthouses, and I built all this cool stuff. But I did the opposite. I wasn't really a good steward of my money in the beginning. It never dawned on me. I didn't understand. I wasn't taught it, obviously, and I think somewhere on a very subconscious level, I wanted to do the opposite, I guess.
Yep.
So my question for you is, how often do you see that play out, and maybe even the opposite of that too? And then, whatever questions you have for me too.
Yeah. Well, it's the teeter-totter. I think that's a powerful story, and I appreciate you sharing it because I think a lot of generations, right? So many people listening to this are thinking about their parents more than they're thinking about their kids. This is the irony of what I talk about. Because when I talk about, here's how we should think about helping our kids learn these things and how to have the conversations, most parents' minds go to their parents, right? So this works all different ways through generations. And there's a lot of ways that we can heal with our family, right? But one of the things I always teach is what we don't heal from, we pass down. And what we pass down can take a lot of forms, right? And this happens with all types of different traumas, all types of different issues that happen in our life and mindsets, things people said to us at one moment in our teenage years or our first job. These things all imprint what becomes a lot of people's identity and mindsets. And what we don't heal from, we pass down. So, your dad, and I don't know about his family, but he definitely had a mindset of look, this could all be gone tomorrow.
Yep.
I need to prepare to stock away, live beneath my means, right? Lord, God bless Dave Ramsey. But, right, his major thing is keeping people out of debt. This is where him and I differ. He starts with money, get your, savings, get your debt, your budget, save $1,000, do your baby steps, get out of debt, and then live well, Well, I start with value creation. Value creation is the fundamental principle to all money. And value creation is much larger than money, right? And I think it starts with you have to heal from what's happened. And both of you do. Every human has to heal from what's happened to them.
Or else this cycle just continues.
Or the teeter-totter flips again with your kids, okay? Or your next relationship, or your next job, or your next company. These things teeter-totter. And so, I think your dad had a certain mindset around money as security, right? And protection from this possible nightmare if somehow it went away. Okay. And it's very difficult for adults that, make money to know what the line ever is to be at peace. And if your goal is for X amount of money to be in your bank account to be at peace, it will never be reached.
Because the goal will continue to move.
Yep. Once you reach it, it's like, what's the next level? Well, now I can have a higher, I can buy this or that, but I have another level. Or, oh, well, that savings number wasn't as padded as I wanted it to be. So now it has to be this. Well, that's not as diversified enough. Oh my gosh, did you see the news or the markets? It's a hamster wheel. You are chasing something that will never be reached because money makes you more of who you already are. Until you heal that, you're not going to get anywhere. You're just going to be spinning. And so a lot of generations, they look at their parents and your eye always goes towards the downside, right? We all experience this. Your girlfriend could say 20 nice things about you and then one bad thing, or call you out on one thing. And where does your mind draw?
The bad thing. That. Yeah.
Your parents could spend their whole life sacrificing and providing and doing everything and trying to do the best they can. And then that one hit, core memory. And that's what kids dwell on. It's where trauma comes from. It's where mindsets come from. And we have to be, first of all, forgiving, right? In fact, one of our coaching processes we take families through is like, how do you actually forgive someone? You can't just say, I forgive you. You can say it, but it doesn't,
it's not going to do
feel
anything.
it.
Yeah.
Like you have to move through to love, to actually let go and heal from things, or else you will do the opposite and then pass down the opposite. Okay.
So just flip-flop.
It flip-flops all the time. And so, when you were growing up, you were seeing so many different things that had happened between your relationship with your dad that caused you to go, I will never do that.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember saying that out loud when I got, when I was probably 16 to, 18 years old. I remember saying to myself, literally out loud, I am going to buy cool stuff and I'm going to have cool stuff because my dad never had cool stuff and he worked his what off and he didn't. And why? I was so mad.
Yeah.
At that time in my life, I was so mad at him, right?
Yep.
Like, how could he work so hard and make so much money and drive this piece of crap Camry? I was embarrassed. He would come pick me up from school every so often and I was embarrassed as a kid.
Yeah.
You know? And I remember telling myself, I'm going to buy a Lamborghini.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
But that screwed me up too.
How did you feel when you did those?
Horrible. I was depressed. I remember at 23, 24, 25 years old, feeling pretty lost, like up until a couple of years ago. I'm 29 now. And, I got to this point where, here I am, 24, whatever. I've owned multiple Lamborghinis. I had an Audi R8. I lived literally in every penthouse in Arizona that you could think of. I traveled the world. I bought all the cool stuff. I did every, aside from maybe buying like a jet or a yacht, right?
Yeah.
I was living the life and I hated it. I hated it. I sold everything, and
Isn't that crazy?
And I 180'd and now I'm 29. I'm sure if you ask me at 39, there'll be a lot over the next decade I still have to learn, but my mindset now has flopped again where I'm now actually, I would argue, more in the middle. Where I'm like, okay, I want to save, invest, build cool stuff. But, I started going on like mission trips. I got really into my faith.
Yeah.
And that really faith, which maybe we can talk about in a little while too, because I know you share the same faith as me. That was a game changer for me.
Yeah.
Because it gave me a sense of, I can go serve other people and feel better than when I served myself.
Yeah. See, there's this brilliant quote from a theologian that I've been reading recently, N.T. Wright. He said, people get God wrong a lot. They think God has a magnifying glass. and he's trying to burn them like ants and make their life tough. But if you understand God's love and what he did for us through Jesus, right? Like it changes everything.
Everything.
You know, and God did not open up the gates of heaven to let us in. God opened up the gates of hell to let us out. That is the difference. And I think if you see that gift, right? And I know so many people listening, like whatever. I love Jesus. Everyone's on their own journey to figure this out. But if you start to understand love and the love of God for you, it starts to fill that hole that money and stuff will never fill. That chasing that another woman or man will never fill. That chasing some achievement or accolade or listing or like, trust me, I've been through the gamut. I know it all. Okay. Those just never fully satisfy. They don't fulfill you. And unfortunately, many people hear this and then they still chase it all.
Yeah.
They still try to fix it all.
Why is that? Why do people have to do it on their own?
Control. I think it comes down to control. I can see something tangibly in front of me that looks tempting, and all marketing is really good and making me feel like I'm worthless without it.
Yeah.
I'm not enough until I get it. And then they fall prey to it. And it just doesn't fill that hole. And it's a God-sized hole. And I think it can, this is why drugs and alcohol are actually momentarily filling it. But then when it drains, there's still a hole. And then the hole gets a little bigger, right? And then you got to put more in, and it gets a little bigger once it drains. Like that's what addiction is. You're trying to fill a hole, and temporarily it might, right? Sleeping around to try to figure out, oh, this is where I can get my identity or my sense of love or acceptance, and sleeping around with the next person thinking that that's going to fill the hole. It doesn't. It just makes it bigger. Temporarily, it probably feels great. All these things do, or else you wouldn't do it. Buying the Lambo, trust me, buying a nice car, feels great, smells great, drives fast, and then you wake up the next morning and you're like,
one day,
what did I do? And
because you did it in the wrong order.
You did it in the wrong order.
And it dawned on me in that moment, I did it in the wrong order. It wasn't the Lamborghini that was bad.
Yeah.
It was that I did it in the wrong order.
Yeah.
I should have delayed the gratification, invested money, been smart with my money, been a good steward of my money, and eventually, if I'm a big car guy and I really want to do it for me, not for other people, not for the world, but do it for me, then down the line with my passive income, take that money and reward myself for having delayed the gratification and being a good steward of my money.
Yeah, I mean, and I think when we talk with our kids about saving and investing, right, what we're talking them is we're saying, look, if you don't learn to master your money, it'll master you. The love of money is the root of evil. Money is not the root of evil. The love of it, making it your identity, making it your focus of everything, making it the goal, making it your achievement and status, and the things that it buys are just a substitute for that money. They all can become idols unless you put them in their proper place. So when we talk to kids and families about this, it's just about giving your money a job. Okay? Hey, money, you work for me. You do not give me my identity. You are one of my employees. And you have different jobs. Different money has different jobs. So some money is for sharing, right? And I think that's one of the greatest, most fun things to do with money. That money's job, that money loves that job, has a blast having that job. It's giving without return, and it's helping and sharing out of abundance. And I think the more we give, the more of an abundance mindset we have. It makes us better investors, better business owners, better at like everything related to money because it puts it in its proper place, right? And then some money, the job is to make more money. Your job is to grow by investing, right? And saving for investing. But when we talk about the job of money saved with our kids, what we say is, hey, there's 3 E's that we want to save for. One is emergencies. Our kids know like things can go wrong and there's over 25 or 30 things that could at any moment break or you need help with. So it's great to have money saved for emergencies. Education, right? Education in yourself, in coaching, in investing in like your learning and mindsets or public, private school, whatever, or experiences, right? We want to save for great experiences as a family. the money needs to actually do a job, right? Sitting, doing nothing is not a job. This is really important.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that money sitting somewhere has the job of security. It will never give you security. It will never give you peace. It will never give you like the feeling you're hoping for. Money needs a job.
Wow.
And if it doesn't have a job, it runs you.
So many people have that wrong.
Yeah, that's right.
I know because I've been there.
Your dad might have been in that boat.
He probably still is.
He wants that money to have no job other than sitting there that he can look at and have a very momentary sense of like peace and security. And then a lot of like, and then the drains. And then he needs more. And then it drains and he needs more. And he will never be able to use the money for its proper job. Some of our money has the job of having our family have a blast.
Yeah.
Okay? That's some of our money's job. Not all of it, right? The key to wealth is very simple. I trust me, I talk to 5-year-olds for a living and their parents. Spend less than you make and invest the difference. It is that simple. Okay? Spend less than you make and invest the difference. That is the key to all wealth, period. Like if you don't have to go to school for a long time. That's one sentence.
Yeah. Spend
less than you make and invest the difference. That is all you need. And spending, saving, investing, all gives your money a job. Okay? It works for you. Okay? Spend less than you make and invest the difference. And when I say spend, that's also sharing and spending.
Yep.
But it all has a job. And sitting in a bank account doing nothing, not having a job, means that it's your manager, it's your boss. And it causes all sorts of problems. So it's that simple with especially adults listening to this.
Yeah.
It's like, I know the feeling. You never know the line at which you cross. And every parent thinks, or adult thinks that there's a line, that if I just get to that line of investments and saving, I will have a different feeling. I will have peace. I will have security. I will be there. I will have made it. I'll be loved. I'll be accepted. And that is what just causes the hamster wheel. And it's not until people get to the other side. And trust me, I've been down a lot of the things you're talking about. I've bought the things. Okay. I've made dumb decisions. Okay. I have fearfully saved. Okay. And then money became my boss. I've made those mistakes. And a lot of people, until they get to the other side of it, it's like they don't believe you.
Yeah.
They don't believe you. Or worse, they just say, forget it all. I'm going to live for now. A lot of Gen Zs in this boat. A lot of young people in their 20s are in this boat right now. It's victim entitlement, and they're not going to admit it, but in their brain, they're like, this world is not going to, the economy's not going to last. I've been through 2 recessions in my life and a pandemic. This is all a joke. 2/3 of Gen Z believes that we are in late stage capitalism. Think about that, Austin.
Yeah.
They think this train's going to stop. And you get what you think a lot in this world.
Yeah.
Okay. They think, oh, well, the S&P was at 500 when my parents were my age. Now it's at 5,000. There's no way it's going to go from 5,000 to 50,000 in the next 25, 30 years, 40 years. That's what their mindset is.
Wow.
It's all crony capitalism. It's all AI. It's all, put up by debt.
Is it just a pessimistic outlook on the world? I mean,
yeah, it's a form of victimhood. Victimhood blames everybody else. Entitlement blames everybody else. Instead of taking personal responsibility. I don't care about the market.
Right.
I'm in it. I have, a ton of diversified investments, real estate, business investments, stock market investments that are diversified, private investments, whole life. I have the gamut. All right. Probably because I'm ADD and I want to learn it all, but I don't care about what the market is
because you can't control the market.
But what I can do is create value. See, the market is made up of a bunch of individuals choosing to create value for other people. That's it. And if I create value for you by solving a problem of yours and you pay for it, we both win. I profit, you win. If you do it for him, he does it for her. That's the economy.
Yeah.
That's how I teach economy to children.
Capitalism.
It's capitalism. It's the ever increasing cooperation between strangers. That was Dan Sullivan.
Wow.
He told us that definition of capitalism. One of the greatest definitions I've ever heard. Create cooperation between strangers. Solve more wants and needs, larger and larger and bigger over time. That grows the economy. So I don't care what's happening around the world. Like, obviously, I don't want people to die and go to war.
Sure.
But I want to help a whole generation of people create value, because that will be the greatest indicator in our markets and in families and in jobs and in personal like growth and sense of like emotional and spiritual health that any of us will ever see.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen from some policy. It doesn't happen in Washington, D.C. It doesn't even happen in the classroom. It happens at home.
That's so powerful.
That's it, man.
Yeah.
If you truly understood the economy, you would focus with your family right now. You would say, I can't change the world right now, but I can impact my family and those I love most. And these are the mindsets that help it.
So powerful. You mentioned a little while ago, and I just want to talk real quickly about inheritance.
Yeah.
And in particular, you mentioned like a line, like a fine line, right? Because I think you even said, it's not like, you give your kids nothing.
Right.
But at the same time, you don't want to give them everything, right? Is there a way to articulate that line in a more...
Everybody wants the number.
Well, I'll give you an example. Like I had a guy on my podcast recently. He's a big whole life guy.
Yep.
And you have whole life, you understand. He very strategically set up his whole life policy. He has 17 whole life policies. Like 12 on himself and then like one on each of his kids, one on his wife, right? He's already at like $40 million death benefit. Anyways, he set it up to where the beneficiary, when he dies for all of this whole life, will go into a trust.
Yep.
And then that trust, and I'm probably going to explain this wrong because he's the expert, not me, but then basically he has it written out in that trust to where then in the future, the money will then go into like another trust and it'll just keep on going, right?
And accruing. 6%.
It's like essentially the Rockefellers. I think
that's what the Rockefellers do.
Right.
Every member of the family or marriage is in or grandkids, all the way down the line, they get the biggest whole life policy they can possibly get.
Yeah.
It grows at 6% no matter what the markets ever do. And they loan against it. And when someone dies, it's a massive payout.
Yep.
They put into it and they use that and they are their own bank.
And they have to get another policy anytime they have a kid. Like it's literally in the trust. It's like automatically open up new policies, right?
And if you continually do that at 6% for hundreds of years, you have billions and billions of dollars.
If not trillions.
Trillions.
Just, depending on where you start.
That's right.
Yeah.
I have a huge red flag in all this.
Yeah.
And I'll explain it.
Explain that. Yeah. And explain that and also explain, if you can, the line.
Yeah. So it's more about what we leave in our kids than to them. There's your line.
Yep.
See, when I say heritage over inheritance, what I mean is I want my kids to have a last name that means something way more than I want them to have $1 million when I die. Because if they don't have a heritage and the values I hold dear and my wife that we hold dear, and they're not carrying them on and they're not growing in their value creation in all these ways, and they're not carrying on the mindsets and skill sets and the relationship depth, giving them $1 million would be suicide. It will ruin them. Actually, it will make them spend it and then their kids will be ruined. So it hurts 2 generations down, the worst. Okay. And then then I hope that they can start the cycle all over and get back up. And if it's more about what we leave in our kids than to them, like our family values, what we stand for, right? There's a specific way to do this that the best families in the world that I see, they're not the richest families, many billionaires, but they used to be.
Yeah.
Okay. The way they do this is critical. The way they pass on stories of the family and values of the family and mindsets, the way they bring their kids along with them into work, into business, into their travels. They're always doing more with their kids than for them, right? That is what creates heritage. See, if you want to get rid of a family legacy, get rid of the chief storyteller. We got to be really good at telling great stories to our kids about family stories or great life stories that pass on the values that we care about most. My family, it's very simple. Donnell's faith, family, and fish. My 4-year-old says it every night.
I like the fish. Yeah.
Fish stands for fun and adventure, integrity, service, hard work. And so faith in God, family, we back each other, we support each other and love each other, and fish. And every day we're telling stories of our lives. Our kids know dozens and dozens of amazing stories.
Can you give me an example of a story you've told them?
Yeah, on my dad's side, Camilla Donnell, 170 years ago, came across the Oregon Trail. We have her journal. She was the 19-year-old medic. They lost half the people. Crazy stories in this journal, like unbelievable stories of like the last bullets. They went out, a young guy went out to try to catch a buffalo and he got one, and then wolves tracked him up a tree for 3 days and he shot them all and they were gnawing at the tree and like came back with just enough meat to get them to survive to the next outpost. Like we tell these crazy fun stories or hard stories. We have, family members that have passed and struggles. We tell all the stories, but we always bring it back to faith, family, and fish so that our kids have an anchor of what it means to be a Donnell when they go out into the real world. And if you do not do that, your kids are rudderless.
Yeah.
They will get the bad mindsets from the world. Okay? And I don't have to go through the laundry list of all of the wrong cultural mindsets that do not help create legacy. That's a critical piece. So when it comes to a number, right? And I always joke with my friends, it's like at this point in my career, my grandparents or parents could leave me $100 million.
Yeah.
It would not change my value creation. It will not change my drive, right? Because I have been able to overcome so many things and go through so many things and create so much value in all these different companies or relationships or opportunities that doesn't affect me. That will affect certain other members of family and cousins and whatnot. So there's a difference here. But do I want them to leave me all? No. My love for them and our depth of relationship has nothing to do with the money at all. And I couldn't be more thankful for that, right? How many adults right now in their 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s are waiting for a parent to die with stuff? And they don't risk. They don't take that chance. They don't start that opportunity or business. They don't go through another healthy struggle because they're just like, you know what? I will get this piece, the house, the assets, the whatever money. And so they don't do it. And then all of a sudden that person lives for 20 more years.
Yeah.
Okay. Adults, don't think we're just talking about children here. Adults do this in mass. So what we like to talk about is there's a difference between an I love you gift and a coasting gift. An I love you gift says, you know what? We've been blessed. Okay. I want to give you this. You're going to college, you're getting married, you got your first job, you're getting your first home. Like this is I love you gift. And every family, that number could be different. Maybe it's a few grand. Maybe it could be 6 figures, whatever.
Yeah.
That's I love you. It crosses a line when it gets the kids to coast, to not go through their own healthy struggles to grow. If they ever slink back and be like, okay, I don't have to do that thing, or like now I don't have to try this, then you've crossed over into coasting. Or they go, I'm just going to blow it on this, and this, and this. Okay, now you're into coasting. And coasting, anything that keeps kids from creating more value or hurting that drive is a coasting gift. And I think all families are different. Okay? And we've been given gifts along the way. When we got married, when we had our 3rd kid, like they felt like it was a good time and as a tax thing. And they're like, we'd like to share a gift. But it wasn't millions and crazy stuff. Okay? I have a really big issue with all of these influencers out there who say things like, I just bought my kid their first real estate and they're 7 years old. I just got my kid a whole life policy and they're 4 years old. So if the principle is do more with than for them, why not do these things with them? How about you flip a home with your 12-year-old? How about they do everything and you're there to coach them? Yeah, let's get the real estate. Okay? And by the way, you're paying me back after this first flip, but you need to learn the skill.
They manage the project.
Yeah. You want to do whole life? Awesome. You need to research it. You need to figure it out. And we're going to start small and you're going to earn the funds and we'll match.
Totally different Totally different way of doing it.
Bring them along. What you want your kid to have a fourplex when they're 20 years old, racking in 11 grand?
Yeah.
To sit around and play video games and drink?
It's not going to do anything. It's going to be terrible for them.
That will ruin them.
Mm.
Okay? And if you're like, well, at least they have an asset. It's like, yeah, they have an asset to then sell and go be more of a useless person. Okay. So you get the mindset here. So do more with than for. Mm-hmm. It's more about what we leave in the kids than to them. One of the greatest questions you can ask, here's one for you. If you could leave one thing to, your future family, okay, or everyone you know, grandkids, great-grandkids, whatever, okay, maybe you have 500 employees that you've been serving and loving. Like, I actually see employees as family in a lot of ways, taking care, and, I'm putting food on helping them put food on their table too. Like, I see it all as family. If you could leave one of these three things to them when you die, what is it? Money and stuff, knowledge, or experiences?
Well, it'd obviously be between knowledge and experiences. Probably experiences, because with the experiences, you're going to have knowledge.
That's it.
Yeah.
Almost every parent immediately goes to experience because they go, oh, wow, all of my experiences have taught me wisdom, taught me knowledge. It's not the money and stuff that made me who I am. It's the experiences. And if that's the answer to that question, then heritage wins the game. So we want to have great experiences with our kids. My wife and I tend to be, there's a huge difference between frugal and cheap. Okay. I do think it's smart to spend less than you make and invest the difference. Like, that is the key to wealth.
Yeah.
But my wife and I, we're clear about, what? This is an incredible experience we want to go on. Whether it's, we just had our 10-year anniversary in Bora Bora, overwater bungalow, blew the doors off, had a blast. Yeah. Did I go into 20 grand in debt to do it? No. Right? Our kids, we had a great experience. I'm taking them to Legoland in a couple weeks. And they earned it this summer. My daughter read 55 books.
Holy cow.
And she got gigs. They were all brain gigs. She got paid for each of them to get the next ones. Like, my son did a ton of building, engineering stuff. Like, he's 6 years old and he's already an entrepreneur engineer. He's already it. So I want to stoke that flame. So they earned did all these gigs, and they earned all this stuff. We're going to Legoland. And they don't have any idea. I'm going to blow it off the doors. Like, we're going to have a blast. Right. Yeah. And so that's the kind of thinking here. But I'm not taking them to Legoland. They're planning the trip. See
it's
the
another
difference?
brain gig.
It's another gig.
Yeah.
And while we go to the airport with my son, okay? My 4-year-old Owen, we're now doing it with Owen because he's 4. Because the older kids, 6 and 8, already know how to do it.
Yeah.
So we get to the airport, we're like, hey, Owen, what do we do? He's like, I don't know, we got a flight. We're all carrying bags.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't know. We're like, we have to catch a flight. What's the first thing we got to do? He's like, I think we have to go do you have a ticket? And we're like, where do we go? He's like, well, what airline are we on? We're like, Southwest. He's like, okay, so we find Southwest. And it takes longer. But he gets there. He goes up to the front. He's like, we have a flight. And the lady's like, oh, hi, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Do you have an ID? He gets like, what's an ID? So he gets the tickets. He takes our credit card. He pays for the extra bag, right? We find TSA. He finds it. He learns how to do everything. Hey, what's the gate? Or where do we go? Well, we got to find the gate. So he finds the gate. He can barely count, and he's finding his way through an airport for our trip. What seat we're in, like that. I'm just giving an example.
Yep.
And everyone around us is loving it, by the way. You think it would piss everybody off? They love it. Like the stewardesses are like happy. Like, he's finding our seats. We sat in the wrong seats because he was like, it's here. And we're like, are you sure? He's like, yeah. So we sit down, and the next people are like, that's our seat. Southwest didn't have that issue, but the other one did.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that's the thinking here. The more we can do with our kids than for them,
it's
the
so
better.
Powerful.
That's your line. And I'm not saying like die with nothing and leave them nothing. I'm saying, like, as you think about your legacy, focus on heritage, focus on that piece. And so many more of us that are saver mindset, investor mindset, have a long life of things that they delayed themselves out of enjoying. And if you want to enjoy your family, like, invest in your family. Like, when I think about spending money on a great trip with our family or an experience, I think of it as an investment. The return might not be financial, but it's an investment.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful I have done that. Right. So that's the kind of hope that we have for all these different kinds of families.
Yeah, it's so cool. And you've helped a lot of them. Well, we've already been here surprisingly for quite some time. So I've got like one more question for you.
Yeah.
And I could go for like hours and hours, but we're not going to today. When you look at, just, I guess let's just, my last question will be just like how faith has played a role, right? You look at you being a Christian and the values in the Bible, right?
Yep.
And, raising a family and all this stuff. Like how has that impacted you? Because I like to talk about faith anytime I have somebody that, is a man or a woman of faith on the podcast. So like how has that played a role in this thing that you've built, because you built a heck of a life for you, your family, 7 million people around the world, soon to be 50 million people.
That's our goal.
Like we're talking about a big impact in the world.
Yeah.
What has faith done for you?
It drives it all. I think we talked about earlier, the love of money is the root of all evil. But it's funny when people ask that question because they're trying to figure out like how much can I still love money but not like mess it up. I actually think about this as a different lens because like Jesus is king. Like I love him. I love God. I was going to be a pastor, believe it or not.
Wow.
I was a theology business double major in college. I thought that's where I was going. I was a youth, leader, did all these, tennis lessons and youth pastor and camps. And my senior year at Whitworth, the school I went to for college, I got written in as student body president. Okay. I didn't run. The thousands and thousands of people just wrote my name in. Mm-hmm. And it got more votes than the two people running. And I won. And I didn't want to do it. And the president of the university and the theology professor, Adam Nieder, sat me down. And they said, "We're booting you from the theology department." And I was like, "What?" I got all these like classes and credits. Like, they're like, "We're booting you. You're not a pastor. Everyone here knows you're an entrepreneur except for you. Wow. And you need to go make the marketplace your mission field, like the way you serve people and love them and show who Christ is in the world." And it completely changed my life. So all these companies later and millions of customers and families, this is exactly who I was created to be. And so, I think one of the core principles, if you look at scripture, when it comes to money and stuff, God owns everything. He actually owns everything. Everything comes from him. We are stewards. And if you look at your life in terms of God owns everything. He owns my resources, my bank account, my investments, my house. He owns our family. He has my kids' future. He's got it planned. He owns it all. My goal is to steward it. Then it changes my lens, okay? When there's a windfall or a huge, great business win or a lot of money, it's praise God. Let's make sure to give it and steward it well. If a business struggles, and I've had business failures and nightmares, like I've had it, man, pain, lost $10 million and a bunch of crazy, stupid stuff, or things we worked on for years that we thought were the right thing. It just didn't pan out. Instead of being like, I'm a failure, I'm ruined or blah, blah, blah. You just go, God owns everything. I'm a steward. Guess that's one less thing he wants me to steward. So much more peace, so much more contentment. It doesn't change my drive, but it gives you peace. And I think if you could, if you can choose to lay out your life instead of a closed fist, as an open fist, open palm, it changes like how you view everybody and everything and all the stuff. Right? Like when we talk to children, we talk about generosity first. Everyone asks me, of all the money skills, what's the best one? Is it earn, save, spend, share, invest, protect, borrow? Those are the 7.
Yep.
It's share. A generous mindset is an abundance mindset. An abundance mindset sees the pie getting bigger and knows how to create more value in the world. Okay? Mm-hmm. They don't think tomorrow will be worse. They think it'll be better. Generous mindset. And it's about living your life knowing that God has it all under control. Right?
Yeah.
How many older Christians have you talked to? They're like, what's your best advice for your younger self? And they're like, don't worry.
Yeah.
God's got it under control. He has a plan. And even in the hard stuff, those hard things actually are not setbacks. They're setups. They actually make you stronger, right? Perseverance creates character, and character, like this, creates joy long term, right? So I'm dealing with hard stuff all the time, I see them as healthy struggles to actually grow.
Yeah.
Right? Because God is in charge of everything. And I do think that's the only thing that ultimately will fill the hole.
I think you're right.
And there's a lot of people that try to fill it with everything else, and they want to run away from God and Jesus because of some dumb person in their life that gave them a bad example of a Christian. But it's like, wasn't it Gandhi that said, I would be a Christian if it wasn't for all the Christians in the world?
Yeah,
right?
I think so, yeah.
Don't look at the sinner. Don't look at all the bad examples. We all need God to forgive us from being mess ups. Look at Jesus. I think the Bible is one of the greatest playbooks in the world.
Yeah.
For peace, salvation, family, for business, for health, for relationships, teaching you actually how to love. It's not some ayahuasca journey in Costa Rica. So there's my thinking, man.
I love that. Yeah. Wow. I'm glad I asked you that question at the very end, because go back and rewatch that if you're listening. Scott, we've been here for quite a while. Where can people find you? How do they get, if they want to be a part of these 50 million people that you're about to help, how do they get involved? Yeah.
So Dinner Table's our program. We'll put a link in the notes below. Just click on that link and join our team's coaching all the time.
Cool.
We do like monthly calls. We have resources and PDFs that we just give out like drip all the time. Like, here's the subscription hunt in your home. Here's the family value setup. We do workshops every 4 to 6 weeks with kids, grandparents, parents, that you can bring the whole family in, and we unpack legacy together. And then for those who want to do, we have like a higher end founders group for entrepreneurs or leaders, CEOs, group leaders. And then online, you can just follow me at just I'm Scott Donnell on all channels.
And is Dinner Table a fit for everybody? Like, if anybody watching right now,
yes,
they're a fit.
Yeah, this is a recipe.
Yep.
Right. It doesn't matter if you have kids or not. We have a lot of people that are like, I'm thinking about kids. I'm in my 20s or 30s, and I'm trying to figure this out. Come learn this, because it will really help you in value creation in your work and in your relationships. But also, whether it's newborns, elementary, middle, high school, tons of grandparents are now in this with adult kids.
Wow.
Because they want to think through legacy. They're at the time of their life right now where they want to think through legacy. So yeah, it's for everyone. And we kind of mix it up. Our coaching is some business, a lot of family, a lot of legacy. There's relationship stuff. There's practical skills. We have interviews with people like world famous leaders. Hopefully they have great families.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. I talked to a lot of super successful people that would give it all away in a heartbeat to fix their family.
For sure.
So, but yeah, those are the main ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I appreciate you coming on, Scott. I'm going to link everything down below. So if you stayed to the very end, everything will be down below. Go follow Scott. Check out Dinner Table. And I appreciate you coming on the show, man.
Thanks for having me. It was
Thank
awesome.
you. Hey, if you're still watching, make sure you subscribe, smash the like button, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one.